So good evening, beautiful people. Welcome to the Thursday evening Alaska Food Sovereignty Working Group. Robert Shields. Tonight we are talking about expanding our working group, the projects that we're taking on as a working group, and looking into the future about how we can take the concepts that we've been talking about regarding how we achieve food sovereignty and turn them into celebration points of, hey, look what we did. So let's start off with a check-in tonight. Joe, would you like to check in with us real quick and tell us how you're feeling in like 30 seconds? Joe, can you hear us?
Checking in from Anchorage. Can you hear me? I think my acting up a bit. I don't know if it's my connection, but I'm getting low connection.
Yeah, you're coming in and out, so I can hear Sarah, and I think Sarah can hear me, so I think we're good connection.
Yep.
But anyway, while you're working through that, hey Sarah, how you doing tonight?
I'm great. I'm really good. Yeah, I'm super good. I'm really excited. I've got an upcoming broadcast on Saturday with a gentleman out of Philadelphia that uses hemp in his baking innovations. And so I'm really excited for Saturday's podcast. I was able to secure him as a guest today, so I'm feeling really good.
Well, that's awesome. Hey, if you want to throw a link to that podcast in the chat, I'll see if we can help get some more people attended to it. I'm doing pretty good. It has been very productive. It's been an amazing couple of weeks. The last couple of days were very chaotic, but I'm having hope that the chaos is leading to new horizons and good things and the end of old things. And so new friends and everything else going on. And I'm grateful for you guys being here and grateful for the conversations I've been having with people on Facebook and offline about food sovereignty and the vertical farm project and the relation to how it talks to, or it works towards food sovereignty efforts in other places around the world, which I think is what we need right now, not one at a time, but just popping up all over the place. So let's try with Joe. Can you hear us, Joe?
I can hear you. Can you hear me now?
Sure. Would you like to check in with us real quick?
Yeah, just doing the same old, working at the liquor store, building up the plan. I got my laptop taken care of now, so I can start doing some more writing, and because I got to write that insulated food economy theory I've been developing, and then kind of take over as hosting for these events, hopefully, or these meetings, hopefully. But that's where I'm at.
Yeah. Well, we very much appreciate you doing everything you can, and all the years of research and diligence that you put into your own food security research with your own business and stuff. And so hopefully we can get all these stuff adding and creating contributions and stuff. So I don't know if you guys had a chance to see, I posted not quite an agenda, but some thoughts I was sharing with someone this afternoon that seemed like a good thing to formulate into an organizational chart of sorts. And that's basically looking at the different working groups that allow us to kind of break down this monumental task into pieces where people can, feel comfortable engaging, but also something where they can see where their individual efforts are contributing to this larger, more ambitious goal. And basically the first thing is the food sovereignty working group, or the Food Sovereignty in Alaska Facebook page, which is currently the main page for this effort, now has 490 members, and that's up from like 460 members about a week ago. So I've been working that, and I would encourage you guys to continue working that, and not just for people in Alaska, but as I posted, Alaska, I think, is in a unique position to be able to demonstrate how we can achieve food security or food sovereignty, and what food sovereignty means both to the people as well as to the planet. And I know right now we are in dire needs of getting connected with the earth. Food's a great way to do that. We're also in a dire situation to basically stock up on our food stores and make sure that in the case of a long-term disruption, that we have the ability to take care of our communities and ourselves and our families. So that's part of the reason that we came together as a food sovereignty task force, to look beyond food security, which is just access process and really focusing on the heart of the problem, which is the means of production and everything from growing to processing to consumption, and finally the reclamation process that starts the whole thing all over again. And the big thing about this is that it also puts in context an economic foundation for the state around food, around caring for people and the planet, and using the nurturing of people as the most innovative thing we can invest in. But I get into the philosophy too much, and I just want to go through the steering or the agenda real quick for tonight. So give an update on the Polaris project, or the project that we're working on. And then basically the working groups I've identified, there's like 10 of them here. And I kind of related them to different toolboxes tools you might find in a garden tool or in a toolbox. And salt is the steering committee, shovel is the gardening crews, spatula is the cooking folks, root cellar is the folks to focus on storage and processing. Pitchforks are material reclamation. The chuck wagon is about distribution. The dinner bell crew is about education events. Barns are about caring for live animal. Clipboards, administration and research. Hammer is about different construction types, and then calculating and or calculator is accounting and fundraising. So that's the scope of the agenda. Is there anything else that either of you would like to add to the agenda?
I can't think of anything really.
Right. Okay, and if you would like, Sarah, I know that you had an interest in a project where you're at. If you want, you could touch on that. We might be able to gain some interest for getting more people involved, or if you prefer, we can chat about that privately, and you can organize it until you feel ready to talk to people about it. So,
are we talking about the hemp is food security program that I'm working on?
If it's related in hearing that. If it's related to a vertical farm project, and food sovereignty, yes.
Right. Yeah. So the program is related to teaching people how to grow hemp for food, how to process it for food, how to cook with it, how to store it, how to do everything regarding hemp for food, because it has the potential, of course, to be a phenomenal fats and proteins based plant. Although what I don't know yet is its opportunity for vertical farming, but I do know that, it does apply to the food sovereignty opportunity.
I'll interject real quick. You can grow hemp in indoor vertical facilities.
Right.
Yeah, and that I just wanted to add that's another dynamic, and I will also underline real quick that I'm not just into vertical farming. I'm into permaculture and regenerative agriculture and rewilding.
Right.
So I'm a bit of a mixed bag. So I just wanted to put that out there.
We have to be. We have to be. The whole state has to be a mixed bag. We can't all just count on one vertical farm. Like we've got to be a mixed bag to make it work.
Yeah, and that's a good point of clarification, Jill. Thanks for bringing it up. I've added it to the agenda. Actually, you know what? We can go ahead and start off with that, because I don't know if you've had a chance to check out some of the posts I've recently made on the Food Sovereignty Alaska page, but I've addressed some of these issues. In fact, that vertical farming is not the end all of food sovereignty in Alaska or anywhere else. However, the pretty pictures create the framework to have the conversation about how we achieve food sovereignty as opposed to food security. And it also, and I've also indicated, as we've discussed before, that what we've laid out already is that in order to achieve our 80% goal of in-state production in 10 years is going to require a combination of vertical farming, traditional farming, and then fishing and foraging and different kinds of gathering. And those things are the key point of our group. We recognize that 20% focusing on trade is part of the dynamic diversity stuff, but the focus is the 80% of where we can produce in state and the impact that has and how we go about doing it. So does that answer your questions and the clarifications you were trying to make, Joe?
Well, really, are we a group for action, or are we a group for ideas? Because we can put all these ideas together, but how are we going to put them into action?
Well, that's where the projects
That's
come
what
in.
I'm here for. And you and I will have to talk about the project. That's one thing that comes up when you were talking about earlier. We'll have to talk about VAST's involvement and where it stands in it.
Sure. So, all right. So to go through the core stuff here, obviously we need the food sovereignty working group is the food branch of ARC's effort to create local living economies, to engage folks where they're at, to be able to find hope and plant the seeds of larger actions in themselves and in the communities. So again, kind of talking about the scope, you know, in addition to talking about these 10-story vertical farms that we'd like to see in every major city, you know, the real heart of it is talking about people growing a plant on their windowsill inside of an egg carton or a juice bottle or, you know, something small, but recognizing that it's the disconnect that we have between the planet and ourselves, which is why we have such a disconnect from each other, which is what makes us so easily manipulated in this system. So doing any little thing really helps, but then, you know, the part of this that really moves us is being able to take those small steps and then take another and another and another, and each one challenging ourselves in new directions, which grows to, once we have our own windowsill garden, we plant a bigger garden and a community garden, and then we get into these vertical farm projects that combine food, energy, housing, transportation, and all of that kind of stuff, which gives us a fresh perspective on urban development and what it means to have a city, to raise a city, and to sustain a city. So the other working group, go ahead.
There's a Grow North in Anchorage right now. They run the urban farming stuff right here in Mountain View. I think they would be whoever is part of that group. I think we might be able to would be good to have on board then, because they have some decent insights that are working here in town and in Alaska, to kind of give us an edge on helping educating people.
Yeah. And that's why we haven't talked about engaging or activating any of these other working groups yet, because the purpose of the steering committee is really to facilitate how we are going to engage with other groups, what other groups we want to engage with or need to engage with, and how we want to engage with them, because obviously we're not the only food group in the state. And we want to make sure that our action is to contribute to the acceleration for all the other food groups in the state. That's how we reach our 80%. So figuring out how we fit into this mix is what we've been working on since November. And we've run into some bumps and some rocks, and I think we've been diligent in digging through them. And so we're in a place right now where we can plant some more seeds. People are interested in joining. People are interested in looking at other projects besides the Polaris. People are looking at the Polaris as an example of how they can build farm projects in their own states. So there's a lot of potential here, and it's just a matter of getting organized, which is the reason that we continue to have these meetings on Thursday nights and record them so people can get up to speed and we can stay up to speed together. So to go through the list here, we have the SALS as the steering committee, which is kind of what we're trying to do now, which is that's why it kind of feels a little repetitive sometimes, going in circles. But we are making progress. We're blazing through new territory, and we're looking at how we might be able to bridge the gap between existing organizations to be able to provide a value-added commodity that provides really just accelerates what we're trying to accomplish and helps us achieve our timeline. But beyond that, we have, you know, the shoveling working groups or the gangs, or, you know, the people that are really just interested in, they're either trying to organize community gardens, or they're looking to be involved in community gardens, or they're looking to start a business around gardening. There's a lot of elements in that could be expanded upon. And that goes to the core part of this, which is the production. The roots, kind of skipping around a little bit here, the root cellar, which is the storage processing group, that's a key element of being able to use our excess, as well as to be able to bridge the gap between long winters. And the challenge has always been there, the cost of energy, which again, why we're trying to engage this as a food sovereignty movement, because that allows us to address that. Yes, we need to address energy in this mix too. But on the steering committee, do you have any thoughts on the scope, on purpose to that? I'll start with Joe.
The purpose of the food sovereignty, or like
Nope,
getting together?
Nope, just the steering committee, the scope of what the steering committee should be looking at. And are you comfortable with what I've laid out, or do you think we need to make modifications?
It was a lot to take in. It sounds pretty decent. I mean, it's going to be a work in progress as we go, so we'll make the adjustments necessary as we go.
Sure. So, Sarah, what do you think about the scopes of the steering committee and this analogy of toolboxes and gardening?
I think it's extremely creative, and good job for putting it out like that. I mean, it's fun. It makes it easier. I mean, not easy necessarily, but it makes it fun and really can separate people. As you were describing the shovelers, I have, some people in mind that came to mind that I would reach out to regarding, hey, would you like to be a part of this movement under this category? And so that really makes, now what would be a tool that would make it very easy to train people on would be, of course, a tool in some sort of written format, that would be able to say, the saw is this, the shoveler is that, the root cellar kind of person is this, just like you were saying, but then have that in kind of a bullet pointed form. So individuals, as they're reading through it, can begin to think of people, oh, I know a person, oh, I know this person, and they can start to bring those people on board and grow that. So whether it be a brochure or a PowerPoint or, some sort of a written form, just like Joe said, it's a lot to take in, but it's a phenomenal concept. And so giving a visual that can go with that audio would be really helpful.
Yeah, I'm working on that. I'm trying to put it in context of the project. I have posted a little bit to that, but I would like to know that you have inspired me, and so I did add a new tool. It's called the Tractor, and it's focused on training. So this is so essentially, so the next one is the shovel, the gardening. So you understand this, you guys like the scope of this. You don't think it's too broad or too, I mean, it can cover a lot of things, but it does focus on just this one gardening aspect. So this time I'll start with Sarah.
I think that it's a good tool for the description. There are people that simply just want to garden for the sake of that's just what they want to do. They're not focused on any other aspect of it. They just love, this year was the first year that I grew a garden, and I found that my thumb wasn't as black as I thought it was. And I actually grew some stuff. It's pretty awesome. I ate my own food. It's great. But I can say that that's not really my strong point. Like I don't love it. Like it just doesn't excite me the way it does other people. So being able to have a category such as that and really expand on the strength of that in a person, that they can really fit in that space, having it, outlined like that.
Okay. So Joe, what are your thoughts on the shovel club, the gardening part?
Yeah, it sounds cool. It could be like we could have multiple ways too, because like Sarah mentioned, some people just do kind of gardening as a lifestyle, like my grandma did on her property in Estacada, Oregon, where she fed herself but also shared with her neighbors. And we could have like like a tool, because like our Buckminster Fuller says, if you want to teach anybody anything, you got to give them a tool, so they'll learn on their own, for the most part. And so whatever we develop is definitely has to be engaging and comprehensive, but simple. So even if it's just like a brochure or a little video, it's something that, or maybe even like a little, I know Flash is down now, but they have different types of programs. So we could find somebody to make like a little gardening game, that kind of outlines that actually you can apply to your actual garden, and different like, and you can make it look kind of not so cartoony or cartoony. It just really depends on who we're trying to appeal to mostly. But I think something like that would definitely, if it's definitely engaging, something they can engage with, we'll get a lot more people with it.
Yeah, that's definitely something for the education group. I was thinking what we really would be great if we could reach out to the developers of Farmville or something like that and actually get them to give kids points for actual gardening. It's like they do with these Pokemon. They get people out wandering around looking for these spots to battle Pokemon and stuff like that. Maybe we can do some gardening tie-ins there, so we can do an augmented reality gardening program. But
we could probably go cheaper and find, because there's locals that do this app development, and local artists who can make the designs, and like they're up here. We just got to find them. And they're looking for their breakout chance too. And that way, we can hire them. I wouldn't say for cheap, but we don't want to rip people off, by filling them up with like something because they're doing something good.
Sure.
But we don't have to. But a company like Farmville is going to ask like a way ton. And if we want to get on the localization effort, then that would be a part of it too. Getting locals involved.
The localization part with developing an app can be challenging, as these local not Dine and Dash, but these delivery services have found. So again, it's just an idea to explore how we might be able to engage a wider audience. Great idea, just kind of building on that. So the next one here is the spatula. Now, obviously, cooking's a big part of this because that's the center point of the culture, the dynamics, and everything like that. But you guys see the value of having a group that's just focusing on the cooking, the community part of it. I'll start with Joe this time.
The cooking part, maybe.
Yeah, this particular working group that I've identified as the spatula, which is focusing on cooking and cooking related things.
Oh, I mean, you could have like a cooking show, and we could get, again, even more local guests too, because there's a lot of famous local chefs out there that are. Some of them got wrote a few books about cooking in Alaska and having a lot of Alaskan vegetables involved in their recipes. So I mean, that would be really cool, and or releasing a cookbook as well, with also guides on how to, or like some simple guides on how to garden those things too, or best recipes or best pairs with these vegetables, like a cookbook. I think would be a good idea. And to summarize what I was tangenting on, sorry.
And then one of the real opportunities I was seeing, especially to connect with Juneteenth, was being able to do these barbecue cook-offs and the food competitions, and how much lettuce can one person eat, in 5 minutes, instead of hot dogs, or something like that to promote local foods, or how many carrot cakes can you eat, or there's
we could do something like that around Rondi too.
Well, and see, this is the point of putting together. This is the point of putting together these working groups. You mentioned it a few minutes ago that you want this to be a working, this effort to be a working group. And so the reason that we're discussing these different types of working groups now is because more people are coming in. And I had a conversation with a guy earlier, and I was actually doing some troll checking, making sure he wasn't, just a bot or anything that's going to, screw with stuff. And once I verified he was human, I basically said, the gates are open. Welcome to the garden. And then the extension from that conversation is, so would you like a shovel? Would you like a shovel or a spatula? I was asking him how he would like to contribute. And as that conversation evolved, well, it manifested into these different working groups that we're discussing now. So that's kind of why they're on the agenda for us tonight, to discuss if this is, if these are useful, if the scope's appropriate to be able to engage folks in a meaningful fashion where there's an exchange. Part of the permaculture principle is that people aren't volunteering just because it makes them feel good. It's a very, very low energy value exchange. And this is going to benefit every single one of us. Any progress, any success that this group has can do nothing except to help create a healthier future for Alaskans. And that's what we're all here for. So that's kind of why we're talking about these things. So the next one here is the key, the root cellar, and basically focusing on different processing. And I think Sarah was talking about processing hemp. Well, there's definitely a lot of ways to process hemp depending on what you're processing, whether it's the leaves or the seeds for food and stuff like that. And that requires different machinery. And instead of trying to do these big industrial processes where, like, if Alaska had a bunch of roads and was connected like every other city, we could have like one central processing center for the whole state, but we don't. And I don't think that's the way we should go. And so looking at scale technology, we may not be wanting to have 50 people out there with hand grinders grinding it all up, but we could find some happy mediums. So with this group, do you think that having a root cellar working group is appropriate and adequate for our scale? I'll start with Sarah this time.
Yes, because it's vital to the every piece of it's vital, but this is vital because you take it from the farm and you can tell people to cook with it, and you can teach them how to cook with it at the raw form, or you can also work through grocery stores and things of that nature, and so all of it at the, like, I don't really have anything profound to share on that one, because everybody, this is such a perfectly set up really diagram of how each person has a part to play in this, and each person has something that they're going to feel that they're led to and is their calling. Like the other night on my Facebook page, I did a Cooking with Sarah live broadcast, and I just basically chopped up a bunch of vegetables and then talked about how I was going to saute them. And so there's really great opportunity for that, but I don't have I just have the premise of hemp, right? That's what I know most. And I have looked into a deholing machine. Getting a deholing machine from China is about a $25,000 investment, just one deholing machine. And so it's not a cheap process. But once you get that one machine for hemp, you can use it for other things. So there's that cross use of the machinery as well that needs to be considered. Plus repurposing what we have, just really looking at existing equipment and seeing, is there any way we could make modifications to that to process at the level that we need, and go from there.
Okay. Well, and I appreciate that. This is just for us checking in and making sure that we're all on the same page, and that we, that we're agreeing that this is how we want to go forward, and that's the purpose of these groups. So I appreciate you guys working with me. So Joe, actually, I wanted to say that, when you're talking about raw food, it gave me the idea of putting together a raw food cookbook. I mean, it's an oxymoron, raw food, you don't cook raw food. But
right.
Anyway, and also the idea that, if we didn't have China or another place to buy a dehauler from, we would do what we've always done, and we would probably send our best mechanic out into the junkyard and say, I need this is the function that I need. Can you figure out something for me? And we do have people like out here in Alaska in abundance. And so, you know, those could be the people working in the Hammer group, is to help us overcome some of those challenges. And they may not be able to or be able to build us a big enough deep hauler for like every seed in the state, but again, we don't have to. So Joe, what are your thoughts on this whole root cellar stuff group?
I think it kind of makes me think of, you know, when I hear root cellar, I also think of like seed vault. And, you know, there's something that like this could do. It would be if it's on the information arm of like seeding and stuff like that. Would be, you know, about laws pertaining to that, because there are states that have laws that prevent people from collecting seeds, which that is a whole nother discussion. But I think that would be pertinent, at least to part of, because that's food sovereignty in itself. Food security is your ability to eat continuously, while food sovereignty is your say in how it's done. And I think something like that is very important.
Good. So you touched on two important things here. One, the seed vaulting part of this. You know, it's being seed saving, and that kind of element is really important part of processing, because we need to have, you know, stuff for next year. But you also pointed out, you also brought to light the fact that this isn't a perfect system. I tried to keep to 10 groups because obviously, as the steering committee, we don't want to be overwhelmed by spending our entire hour-long meetings. Well, let's get a committee report from 30 different committees. I mean, it's great that they're active. So we have to combine some of this stuff. I can see the root cellar being where the seed vault could go. But the other thing you brought up, which I'm going to have to give some thought on to where that fits in, is the policy part of this. Initially, I think it goes into the research part, but you know, again, this is where it will evolve moving forward. But definitely the policy research, like the cottage laws and stuff like that, where and this part of where we actually can find value to other groups, and kind of what I've been pitching with Sunrise and Arm in Arm and these other groups, is that they're looking for political action. We would all love political action. We could all grow old waiting for political action. But the idea is that these food groups, these food movements, these food campaigns literally give us the strength to go march in the street. They give us a real positive way for us to connect and grow with each other. And at the end of the day, creating the infrastructure that allows us to grow our own food in our own neighborhoods is the best security we can find in a chaotic world. So the more we can do that, the better off we're going to be, regardless of what they're able to get done in the state capitol, in city council, or even at the White House, or even the UN. So that's why we need to have stuff like this. And again, I appreciate you guys being here. So the next part of this is the pitchfork, and that's the material reclamation. Now, this is the beginning of the end of the cycle, where basically we focus on how we recycle the nutrients that we're generating from the food process. So I'll start with Joe this time.
Well, you know what? Well, that such a process is integral to the framework of the company I'm trying to build. And you know, when it comes to waste reclamation, I mean, it's either going to be a group effort or a business effort, and you can make it both. But how do you get people to understand waste reclamation and what they can do with that waste? So those are my thoughts.
All right. Yeah, you know, gardeners love using manure, but you know, they don't necessarily want to be in the manure business. But you know, there are people out there that they want to be in the manure business, and we need to create the space for that too. So, you know, and it's a critical point, because right now so much of the resources that we need to create a sustainable food system are lost, because the nutrients are going into the landfill, and then that requires us to supplement those nutrients with artificial means, fertilizer and stuff like that. And again, if we didn't have China, if we didn't have these big companies, then we have to look at what kind of systems we have place to be able to provide for these essential needs. So, okay, so
Can I add to
sure.
that? Robert, can I really add to that? Can we focus on an educational piece on that, where because it's very difficult, even in my own house with my own backyard. I don't know where to begin, and it gets messy, and it gets like, I want to be able to take this food waste that I have, and I want to be able to use it, or at least dispose of it properly. And instead, like, it ends up in a big pile, and it's just kind of like there, and it's not like so like, getting some systems in place for people that, even if they have small homes or they have community gardens or community kind of situations, getting that real education, just a really big for I don't know. Does that make sense? Am I making sense?
Yeah, it makes total sense, but it's also why this is a working group, is because you can't just, it may seem like you can just go throw out your food scraps in your front yard and 6 months later they're going to be compost. It doesn't quite work. It works. It technically works like that, but it doesn't work like that at all. So we need a group of people who can help educate people, but also create the systems. Some places have a business that all they do is they go around once a week or twice a week and they pick up the compost. They don't pick up anything else. They just pick up the compost. It goes to a different place. Here in Fairbanks, we have transfer stations. And so we could utilize those to separate out the organic matter, basically by taking taking things that are sorted for free and charging for mixed garbage. But having a working group be able to develop this is really important, because from my experience with garbology, we all live in the same fishbowl. When you throw something away, there's a very good chance it's going to hit me in the face. So being able to, and vice versa. So we got to try to figure out how we, address this stuff in a sanitary way. We don't want water, we don't want sewage or anything like that leaking into the waterways or the wetlands. So that's why, again, we're not discussing things that we're always going to be discussing. We're discussing our organizational structure, but through the creation of working groups that, as people find, oh, I like to do that, be like, great. Just like Joe, you are now the chair of this working group. So that's kind of how we roll. So the next thing here is the chuck wagon, and that's the group that focuses on distribution. Think Meals on Wheels, but also think getting from farm to food to table, from farm to kitchen to table, those kind of things. And there's education components to all of this kind of stuff. But again, the distribution really touches on the energy component, because the more hyper local we're able to get our food, the more energy or less energy we use in that food's life cycle cost. And one day when somebody says life cycle costing, they'll be like, I know what that is, and I know what the life cycle cost is. We'll get there someday. So anyway, I'll start with Sarah on this. What are your thoughts of having the chuck wagon working group?
Yes. Yes.
That's good enough.
Yes.
Okay.
That's all I got.
Right.
That's all I got.
All right.
I mean, we need it, but it's so unique to Alaska, and that's so important, that transportation aspect of it. So yeah. Yeah.
I actually see this as a way to pick up sponsors from the local food trucks. What better companies to sponsor the chuck wagon group than to, and this is another way, this is another way for us to attract business sponsors, because now we don't have to attract like those local food trucks for just a general food thing. We can do food truck derbies. How fast can you race from one end of town to the other and serve 100 people, and how fast can you reach back, and all some really interesting things that can be done with that, worth exploring. So again, another part of this is making sure that we don't have too many working groups that we're not going to be able to manage. So if some of this sounds like it may be able to roll into another working group that's already existing, again, currently none of these groups are active. They don't have any chairs or anything, but I'm assuming that, like everything else, that's going to start rapidly growing as we start adding fertilizer and things start heating up. So Joe, what are your thoughts on having the chuck wagon group?
So it's like Truck Wagon's food distribution, like a food distribution strategy group, is what it
Yep.
sounds like, right? Okay.
Exactly what it is.
Sounds like a good idea. Sounds like definitely something we can get some people on to help coordinate, because access to food is going to be the most important thing. And I think that group can also work in tandem with some parts of the waste reclamation group when it comes to foods that are deemed not good, even though, like, hey, this thing's still pretty fresh. But that's a whole nother thing, um, because it's interesting. I like the idea. It's definitely something that can be expanded on, but localizing food distribution also would have to. So there's some ideas that I could also probably throw into that as well. I
Wow,
like it.
yeah, that's great. That just, that brought up the whole idea of, it didn't occur to me the fact of thinking about the quality of food that we're distributing, eating, processing, growing, and stuff like that. It's like, why don't we just all grow sugarcane? That's the
Stop it. Don't speak such blasphemy.
that's the point of being able to have these, of have these different working groups to address this stuff of just starting out with the core stuff and expanding into it. But there's literally so much we could do with this. But and that really just takes us into the dinner bell, the working group that focuses on education, nutrition, because one of the biggest challenges with food security is that even if the food we're getting is largely nutrient deficient. And so our bodies aren't getting, so we're basically malnourished and we have food available to us, and that's insanity. The problem is that the food industries don't care whether we're nourished. They just care whether we're still buying their products. And that's why most products have so much sugar in them, because it's addictive. And it's not legal to have crack in your food. So, thank God for small favors.
Not anymore. Right.
But anyway, so the idea of having a dinner bell, ringing the alarm, talking about focusing on the education events, which basically, one event could be a food sovereignty fair, which each one of these groups has their own booth. So there's a lot of things that we could do with this. But I'll start off with Joe on the dinner bell group. What are your thoughts?
Sorry, I'll have to take a pass for a second.
No, that's all right. So Sarah.
So I definitely feel drawn to sit on this committee and be a part of it. In fact, tomorrow morning at 9 a.m., I'm doing a broadcast called Explaining Health, and the topic is the American diet. And we're watching a video called Eating, and it's all the way back from 2005, but it talks about the horrible dangers of an animal-based and refined sugar diet, and goes into very significant detail about how when you change from those things, you can reverse heart disease and cancer and all these diseases that have overtaken our population. And so I just watched it last night, in fact, and was like, man, I need to show this video to my audience. So I'll be doing that broadcast tomorrow morning. But absolutely, like you are not necessarily what you eat, you are what you absorb. And so if our bodies are absorbing refined sugars and all of that stuff, it's just, we have, and this comes at a relevant time for me, because as of right now, I'm battling a candida infection in my child. And so he has been suffering so bad over all the yeast and all the roughness that comes from the American diet. And so but it's changing him to realize, hey, vegetables are really good for me, and they don't cause all this problem in my gut. And so so it's vitally important that we teach people. Now, well, wait, I was about to speculate. So yeah, it's vitally important that we do that we educate.
So
Okay.
the dinner table, is this kind of like, sorry, I was just listening and trying to make sure I caught up properly, because I'm sorry, I'm still I'm processing information still, so you'll have to give me a second. One thing I like to say is forgive my ignorance. I'm slow on the uptake, so just give me a second. So like the dinner table group, we is this like a group that discusses? You'll have to re-summarize it just real succinctly because it was a lot, and I'm still trying to process it and connect it with what Sarah was talking about.
Sure. Well, it was a group called the Dinner Bell that was focusing on basically putting together the educational events that got people thinking about these different elements of food sovereignty and how we achieve them and the steps and all that kind of stuff, because it overlaps with everything else, but a group that focuses on when, where, how can be really critical to, rather than just trying to randomly show up at Safeway and say, "Hey, how's your food today? Do you know anything about it?" So do you know where your food security is coming from?
Yeah.
So that's the purpose of, that's the purpose of looking at just this group. And I know this is a lot to take in. Part of the reason that we record this is that you can go back and watch this as many times as you want. It'll be up on the YouTube channels with the rest of our videos. But to kind of just, so we still kind of, thanks to Sarah, we have 6 categories still to go through. So I just, no, no worries at all. So I just kind of, some of these are self-explanatory. We can delve into these later, but so I do want to get your feedback. So if you guys could just, or if you don't have any feedback, you can say pass. But so the next one is barn. It basically covers the group that discusses how we deal with live animals. Not necessarily for not necessarily for the barbecue for Sarah's how bad meat is, but movie, but for cloth and other things that animals provides value to. So I think what are your thoughts on that, Sarah?
Do it. I mean,
Okay.
You're talking to a vegan, so there are people that wanted to raise livestock. That definitely needs to be a part.
Well, wool is something that wool and yarn and stuff that can be gotten from animals that don't have to be harmed them. Those same animals can be therapy animals for all the people making the transition. And maybe the more time they spend with the live animals, the less time they'll want to spend eating them. Who knows? We could start a chicken therapy ranch. So
Yeah, just don't have him come back next week because that chicken will be gone. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. My bad.
Yeah. So anyway, okay, we're getting off top. So in regards to the group of discussing animals and stuff, do you have any specific thoughts, Joe, to add?
Well, like animals, we talk about farming with animals. Again, that's where you can bring in permaculture, because permaculture farming is pretty much ethical treatment of your livestock, regardless of whether you decide to eat them or not. And so because they work in tandem with you instead of bringing in all this machinery, so they bring back that net zero energy ideals, and that could be an education on that, as well as other uses for livestock that aren't necessarily for grazing purposes. Yeah, I think well, just to touch back on the dinner bell idea, I think we could probably amalgamate that into one of the other ones that involve like food education, like what's in your food, because that's a part of everything that we're doing here when it comes to food sovereignty.
Well, and that's the reason that I wanted to keep it as a separate group, because it is part of everything, so it's like the group isn't necessarily focusing on what to teach, it's how we go about teaching all of it without overwhelming people. I mean, just like you guys have said, this is a lot to take in. So this is basically how we divide up our committee assignments. People come in, they say they want to help, they like, well, hey, great, we got an opening here on the did we just have an earthquake? Anyway, somebody just asked me if I felt something, and anyway, and I'm off track here. So, okay, so the other part of this that I wanted to mention is that in the barn discussion is that this could be the place to talk about insects. where we grow insects for all kinds of purposes, including feeding the other animals that we then eat. So these are just some of the kind of categories that can be discussed by a group that's interested in barns or the barn work. The next one is the clipboard. And these are the people that love paperwork and administration, as well as doing research and stuff like that. This could be where policy comes in. As a ARC is a nonprofit, so we can't be directly politically involved. So our working groups can definitely provide the research that we can send to our representatives or other folks in order to be able to pass along that information to policymakers, which is something I think that, oh, excuse me. This is an area where I haven't done a lot of work because there's a Alaska Food Policy Council. So I feel like they've kind of got that covered. but anything, any research, any data, especially new data, which they may not have uncovered, that we can provide to them will certainly help with their efforts in the policy arena. So the idea there is research administration, dealing with this could also be the area where that group says, well, this is the grant that's available for this kind of farming, and apply here and we'll help you work through the grant. Those kind of things I can see falling into that category. So I'll start with Sarah on this. What do you think?
I love these kinds of people. Thank you for them. They're amazing. God bless them. I need them in my life. We all need them.
Right.
They create the foundations of all that paperwork and all that stuff that, so yeah, we need those people. Absolutely.
Well, I'm grateful to be a librarian and a secretary. So Joe, what are your thoughts?
So I'm not a person so savvy or keen to do paperwork because again, it's a monumental task just looking at the paper sometimes. And so, yeah, get us a little army of paper pushers and we'll be happy.
Yes.
All right.
Paper pushers help push policy. So yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of work. There's a lot of good things that can go into that, and it can be tiring, but it does tie it all together. It's like the spider webs, to catch the fly, you have to spend the hours and hours weaving that web, and then trying not to get pissed off when some wind blows it all to hell the moment you complete the web. So the next one here is kind of obvious. It's the Hammer Group, and this is the group that if we want, this isn't necessarily like the big developers that would go out and build a vertical farm, but this might be the group that would identify, well, these are the companies that could develop a vertical farm. Let's send them a proposal and see if they're interested. This also might be the group to reach out to Home Depot and Lowe's and see how they might be able to coordinate the supplies necessary in each community to build more community gardens, or, which I think is the more critical part, which goes right back to our root cellar, is literally going through the community and finding out, do you have a greenhouse, and if you're not using it, is it broken? Can we fix it? Do you have a root cellar? Do you want a root cellar? I feel like if growing your own food is like printing your own money, then having a root cellar is like having a battery bank for your energy. The more people who have it, the better off we all are. And there's a lot of, and this is a great opportunity for people to get to know each other, because just like barn raisings, we could do cellar diggings. There's a lot of things that we could do to use this to build community. In Alaska, they don't do root cellars, they do the caches, but we can still build caches for people in their backyard. There's still a valid use for those kind of things, especially right now as we're looking at importing 95% of our food. And unfortunately, the reality is that if something breaks down in the system, we're not going to get a notice in the newspaper and then a notice on the TV and then somebody knocking at our door. Do you have enough food? It's going to be, something's coming down the line here you might be ready for. We're going to go to the store one day and there's not going to be anything there. If we can get into the store past the mob that's trying to kill each other to get there. So having these kind of conversations, having these kind of structures in place, there's just perfect reasons for them. And, there are people that just like to use their hands. So getting them involved in focusing them on fixing up greenhouses, building green boxes, building solar cookers, all kinds of buildings related to gardening and food, I think is important to have. So Joe, what are your thoughts on this particular committee?
Sounds like a big task. Sounds like a lot of committees.
Well, I did, yeah, I stuck it at 10.
Yeah, it's still, that's a lot. I mean, it's a lot to divide up into right now. I mean, it's definitely like, it's something to look forward to because as we grow, but it's going to be hard to employ a lot of people early on. Are they volunteering?
Well, that's the other thing is that I've been trying to get with Jeannie to implement our time banking protocols so that from even these meetings are no longer volunteers. And this is about another thing that I wanted to talk to you about with value exchange and getting something for what we're giving here. And that's the fact that when we get the time banking set up is that people will be able to accumulate hours and credits, and they'll be able to use those credits in other areas, whether they're material goods, services, or we're still working out the details of that. So at the moment, yes, it's a traditional volunteer, but it's a transitional organization. We're working on setting up a time banking. The other part of this is that, yeah, construction is a huge task, just like any of this kind of stuff. But we chose to take on 80% food sovereignty in 10 years. That literally means that we've chosen, even though we don't know how, we've chosen to take on the task of transforming the industry in the state. So this is part of how we figure that out. This is part of how we figure out where we fit in. And the value and the benefit we have is that, we can set all of these up into a different a Discord group. We can set up different Facebook groups so that they can communicate on their own, and we just check back in. The purpose of ARC is to empower people to do things, not to do things for them. So that's why we're doing this. The next, go ahead, Sarah.
I want to touch base on that. And I agree with Joe. Of course, yes, there are a ton of committees, but I see the big picture, and I see that as you, Robert, are setting a foundation in which we grow from. So when you plant that seed, here's the seed of the idea, and then somebody comes in and they have this idea that they want to help with this, but they have a general, how can I use this? Their skill set is in a way that can benefit in the hammer spot. Okay, well, when they come in, if they're the first that's meant to be in that committee, then they need to understand that they are the pioneer, that they will be the committee chair, and that starts the game off. So there's as we grow this, having a foundation is perfect. It's wonderful, but recognizing that people as they walk into it they have to be aware that they are the pioneer of that committee, when they come in, and that this is the expectation of that pioneer. Like, welcome to leadership. You're a pioneer. Let's go.
But we also need to remember to remind them that as a chair of the committee, their role is not to do all of the work of the committee. It's simply to make sure that meetings happen on the regular schedule and that the agenda is kept to. That's the scope, that's the whole scope of the chair of a group. So it's not an overwhelming task.
No.
And it can be a very simple task once you're able to automate it and get a system in place. And one day we will have that. And this is the start of that. So I appreciate the kind words here. So this is not the last one here, was my last one, but the calculator, which is the accounting and the fundraising. This goes towards helping apply for grants and other stuff like that, and for financing and loans and construction grants and everything else, education grants, all that kind of stuff, seed grants. So it's divided up between where's the money coming from and how we manage it. We always know where the money's going to. So no problem in spending money. But making sure we keep track of it properly, especially when we get into government grants, which are going to require a high level of accounting, which is one of the reasons that ARC is spearheading this, is because we do have the ability to use software for tracking donations, accounting, and stuff like that. So it's not just a spreadsheet or, you know, a stack of notes and receipts. So the last part of this, and we are a little after 6 or a little after an hour, so I appreciate you guys sticking with us, but we'll wrap this up here real quick. The last part of this is the tracker. This is Sarah's unbeknownst addition to the committees. But yeah, you know, there's a great deal of training that's needed all along this, not just the consumer, but training of the trainers. You know, these food delivery people need to know that these ingredients can do this, that these ingredients are available, and that people will buy this stuff if if they know that they're available. There's one thing I really want to try. I heard it's down in Homer. It's like this wild ice cream where they go out and they collect rose hips or something. They do foraging and they turn that into an ice cream. I'm sure we'll hear about that soon as this hits the airs, but the idea is that that's the kind of stuff that we want to be doing, and we can also highlight that. So we can start, and one of the ways we can use to attract people to these meetings is basically choose a business, an organization to highlight each week. It's a start. So anyway, so training and getting all this stuff is important. Since you created this, what are your thoughts on having a training group?
Of course.
Sure.
Has to happen. Has to happen. Because
Okay.
there's so many elements of control and regulation, and it's about public safety. What it comes down to is it's about public safety, and food is medicine. Food is the first thing you put in your body that determines your health. So if the system is broken and the system is profit driven and the system only cares about how much food they can sell versus is it actually good for the people, then that's where sometimes government has to come in and say, no, we're here to try to protect the people. Has our government been great at it? No, but that's where we're trying to fix it. So yeah, training the trainer is vitally important.
Okay, Joe, what are your thoughts on having a training group?
You know, I agree a lot with Sarah there with the government has been the best, but you know, the government also subsidizes like corn and soy and wheat, big ag, and those are part of the reasons why we have these issues stemming with food allergies, because it's so these big ag industries permeate within our entire dietary system of economic structure. From, I mean, like mentioned earlier, you know, our diets most entirely consist of grains and meat, with hardly any vegetables in between. While those are quietly being completely and utterly cloned and patented. So it's necessary. I do see the bigger picture, believe it or not.
Okay, well, we are past the hour mark, and I feel like this has been a good time. There's still a lot of stuff I'd like to chat about, like projects, the Polaris and, you know, this Hemp for Food project, but we can always meet and discuss next week. So I would like to go ahead, and since we are past the hour mark, I want to try to keep these videos to within an hour for watching. So you want to close out with us, Sarah? How are you feeling?
I'm feeling hopeful. I definitely feel hopeful. I'm grateful for your structure. It does give an outline to follow, and as long as we stay flexible with it, then we will see success and we'll see victory. But no, I'm very hopeful. Thank you.
Yeah, and I'm not trying to create a caste structure here. If you start working on the shovel group, that doesn't mean that your children and grandchildren have to be shovels too.
Amen. Amen. Okay, good. That's good. That's important.
Okay, so Joe, what are your feelings or your closing thoughts for this here tonight? Good. Well, I appreciate both of you very much being here tonight. It gives me hope to see you guys here. I hope people get a chance to watch it and get some feedback, and more people will join us, and that we will have the problem of managing too many people.
Amen.
Um,
Amen.
I like the idea of how an onion grows, is that the circles grow so big, and then instead of just getting bigger, they add another layer. And I think that we can do that too, as we are able to develop our skills, talents, and bring in resources. I'm really liking connecting with the Arm in Arm group, especially as they're able to have the outlines for the meeting minutes, as well as maybe, getting everybody on board with that. So the structure's coming, organization's coming, everything's beautifully lining up, the sun's rising, even though we're starting to head into winter. So, but thank you once again for everyone being here. Thank you for everyone viewing at home. And remember to stay beautiful. See you next week.
Thanks. Be well.